All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right, welcome to the February 26, 2024 meeting of the Climate Action Plan Committee.
You would have a quorum.
And I would actually remind this is an open meeting, but I would remind any visitors or public attending the meeting that they are not to make any noise and disrupt the meeting or to speak during the meeting. I believe, if I can find my agenda, that we do have public comment at the end. So I will get to public comment when we get to there on the agenda. For right now, I'd like to proceed with the meeting in the order in which we have the agenda. So I'm gonna remind the people who are attending the meeting not to, okay, all right, I'm sorry. I'm asking people not to speak at this point in time so we can proceed with the agenda. All right, so the first item on the agenda, and Paul, this will just take a minute, is your second on the agenda. The first item on the agenda is just to review the minutes of the meeting of the Climate Action Plan Committee from February 8th, 2024, which these were sent, and hopefully everybody's had an opportunity to review them. Does anybody have any comments or proposed edits to the minutes of February 8th? We all set? Can I take a motion on the minutes from February 8th? Rachel or Janet, want to make a motion?
I wasn't there, so I don't
Okay.
know. But I'll make a motion to accept them. That's
Yeah.
okay.
I'll pass the minutes of February 8th. They're okay. However you want to phrase it, I'm not sure.
All right. All in favor of adopting the minutes as drafted?
Aye.
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 Any opposed?
Aye.
And then Rachel, I guess, is abstaining.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Thank you. Second on our agenda, I am pleased to say that we actually have a very important visitor, Paul. If you don't mind sitting across from Michael and me, so we can talk with you. We did have a prior meeting with some town officials, and this was probably going back before, it was definitely before the holidays. You weren't able to be there that time, and we wanted to reach out and talk with you about, what we're looking at and, what might be sort of, feasible ways to make strides forward with respect to developing a climate action plan. And just as background, the climate action plan really interacts a lot with DPW in major ways, and I know you've worked a lot with Kathy Stanley, so you're on top of those issues. But I think it falls within your bailiwick or your jurisdiction probably as much as any town official. Because you obviously you have vehicles, you have vehicle issues, you're responsible for buildings, and then there's the solid waste. So those three things are three major things that are addressed in a climate action plan. I guess I should maybe ask you to sort of give us an update as to the work that you've done with Kathy Stanley, which I know has been going on for, I guess, at least a couple of years. Yes. She did give us a written report maybe 3 months ago. About what she's done, but also sort of like about what she's planning to do in the future. And I think that the planning to do in the future, whatever you think is on track, or what you would be looking to next, that would be great to hear from you. And then we all have questions, and I actually have a question from one of our members who can't be here tonight as well.
Sure. Well, thanks for having me, Paul Jaffoon, Public Works. So as you mentioned, excuse me, Kathy Stanley, our energy manager, and I talk all the time. We annually get the Green Communities Grant, which improves, which is funding from the state, directly from the state to us, for $200,000. Used to be $250, now it's $200 because there's so many people in the program. It's for mostly for energy efficient projects, HVAC projects, but you can get into things like electric charging stations, vehicle upgrades, retrofits, lighting, all that stuff. So we've done we've been doing in this program for at least 8 years that I
Okay.
know of.
Oh, sorry, can you give me the name of the, again? The name of the program, grant program?
Green communities.
Oh, okay, sorry.
Yep.
Got it.
So that predates Kathy Stanley by several years, okay.
It does, yep. So, with a, it's a great program, obviously, and with the push to continue and move forward with these projects, and after we got all the low-hanging fruit, all the lighting projects and the obvious HVAC projects, we hired Kathy to, take some of the burden off me and my staff to follow through with these projects and, plan for the future and report on what we've done and report on what we're going to do. And Kathy's done a great job, and we're, progressing all the time. I don't know if you want me to go further into that or.
I guess I guess one of my thoughts, and obviously I want to have everybody on the committee be able to ask questions and have some back and forth, is, I don't know, you're not in charge of the school buildings, right? So it's the other municipal buildings, that school department is in charge of that, and they're director of operations and maintenance. But if you were sort of looking forward to, an eventual goal of getting the buildings off of fossil fuel and onto, heat pumps and other systems and such as that, do you have in your mind sort of like a roadmap or a trajectory to do that? Or not that you can, you can't say when the money's going to be there, so I understand that.
Right.
But I mean, as far as like a triage or a set of priorities, like this is the most obvious building, and then after this, it's this building, or maybe it's still a lot more intensive energy efficiency upgrades before you would get to the point where you would say we should move in a new heating system?
The last point that you bring up
Okay.
is where we're at, is that we'll do anything and everything we can energy efficiency wise before we begin to plan to replace all the systems with all electric systems.
Right, and how long do you see that process being, sort of continuing with the energy efficiencies before you're looking at actually, and I don't know, again, in your mind, is there like, this is building one that I would like to do actually as far as replacing the systems, or do you have like a thought in mind of which building might be the most significant? Again, from our goal, it's reducing the greenhouse gas
Right.
emissions, so we'd like to pick the building that's the worst offender.
Yeah, so
Ideally.
there's a few different factors that will go into it. So we're building a fire station now, so we weren't gonna 5 years.
That's okay, go ahead.
So, excuse me, 5 years ago, we weren't gonna upgrade the heating and cooling system at the Freeman Street Fire Station, a 95-year-old building, when we knew we were gonna replace the building. So there's things like that. Again, there's still more low-hanging fruit out there, insulation, weatherization, things like that we'll attack first. So no, it's not focused necessarily on just one building.
Okay.
It's, honestly, it's the focus is on to lower our energy bills first,
Right.
and then we can, after we do that or don't do that, we can get into bigger issues, whether those measures worked or didn't work.
Right, and do you have a sense, if you continue the current pace, which again, which is with, at least in part, the Green Communities funding, do you have a sense of how long it's gonna take till you feel like all the buildings are really well weatherized and ready for some new heating systems?
It's gonna be longer than 5 years for sure, because of the cost of the projects and, quite frankly, the cost of money, because what it was 8 years ago isn't what it is today, and it's not gonna be what it is, 5 years from now. So we do the best we can, but we can't do as much as we can as we could have
Right,
7-8 years ago.
because the money would have gone further 7 or 8 years ago?
Correct.
Just because construction costs going up?
Just labor, construction,
Okay.
material,
Right,
logistics, all that, that's still happening, that's still a real thing.
Right. Well, I would think even maybe because everybody else is doing this now too, like the materials cost, maybe there's just like a scarcity
Also,
because a lot of
Like I said,
businesses are,
like I said
weatherizing
before,
buildings.
everyone is doing it, so
Yeah.
they cut our funding by 20%.
Yeah, okay,
That was 2 years ago.
right,
But we get every nickel we can out of that 200,000 for sure.
right. All right. So I'm just gonna go around with the group, and I see that Aisha's joined us. Welcome, Aisha. We have Paul Jaffoon here, who is the superintendent of DPW, and we are certainly open to asking him any questions, but I think we're talking about the buildings and the building upgrades now. So Aisha, do you have any questions along those lines?
Not now. I don't have any questions. I might not be able to talk too much because I'm actually on the way, but I'm just listening. Thank
Okay.
you.
All right. So Janet, any questions? You're on mute. We can't hear you.
Sorry.
Okay, now we can hear you.
I'm on my phone, it's confusing. So I guess I'm wondering, because I know we're talking about prioritizing which buildings and what you do in order, if you do try to finish one building at a time, or you do certain things across the board and then start with something else. But you mentioned the fire station, so if you're gonna build a new fire station, does that mean you're gonna start off with the things that we should have in there, whether it be the pump or whatever else in there? So you're gonna start off the right way, or for lack of a better way of saying it, but the way that you want it to be, and that would be the first, would that take priority over the other buildings that have to be done, since we are doing a new fire station?
Yes, thank you. So it's under construction now. We're supposed to open in August.
Oh, wow.
We're doing any and all energy efficiency measures with, construction in 2024. Of course, some things are cost prohibitive. It's not 100% green building, nothing like that, but whatever we can get done with the money that we have to do the project, we're doing.
I've heard that it is actually very sort of up to standards, up to the again, maybe not perfect, but very much up to the standards as far as sustainability and energy efficiency. So I've heard good things about the design and construction of that building. So that's actually good, because it's that's the step in the right direction as far as that being an efficient building. Rachel, questions about buildings and such?
Yeah, so we have gone through and found that there are different, essentially inventories of suggested upgrades from I think 2013. Do we know which of these upgrades have been made? Is there any kind of listing anywhere to see what has already been accomplished in terms of the 2013 and earlier lists?
I think and I don't have a copy with me, I think she's referring to, I can't give you the title, but there's an actual report. There was maybe 2013 and 2015.
We did an annual report a few years ago. I can get you a copy of it. I can email you a copy of it because I found it while I was doing some research. So there are plans that have said, in order to make the town more energy efficient, we need to do X, Y, and Z in various buildings. And I wanted to know if we know that any of them have been accomplished yet.
I would say, if you can give me a copy of the report, I'd be happy to go through it and
Okay.
mark it up as to.
Absolutely. I will do that. It's in my email somewhere. So.
Sure.
And I should have brought a copy, but that's right.
I just thought of it.
Right.
So.
I mean, it goes
But
back
thank
quite
you
a
so
few
much for your
years.
time here. I really appreciate what you're doing.
Thanks. Michael, questions about buildings and such?
Not too much really, but I would just ask you in terms of the money that you have spent, from these grants over the years. In your own opinion, is there anything that stands out as being the most effective use of these monies, or any particular projects that really stand out as this really saved us a lot of money, or this is something that we really want to replicate in the future again, whether it was in terms of insulation or a different lighting system or whatever?
Excuse me, yes. The installation of the roof, the attic at the golf course clubhouse has been the project that has certainly benefited the town the most. You know, not to. I'll talk about the town as a whole now. That's a great place that we have. You go play golf there. You know, 4 or 5 years ago, the cooling system, especially in the summer, was so bad, and it's located the air handlers in the attic. That was a 120-degree attic. That, you know, cool in there was 83 degrees. So one of the first things that we did with Kathy here was, you know, insulate that roof and the gable walls in the attic. In that summer, and since, of course, knock on wood, haven't gotten any no cooling calls since. We also added some heat pumps in the building to supplement the air handler, and the place is very well attended with the restaurant and the golfers alike.
Good.
And I presume, and maybe it's not your department, maybe it's the town accountant, but I was just curious whether people are sort of graphing, energy costs from, one quarter to the next or from 1 year to the next, so that, can people, or could somebody graph so people could see, the last 5 years we've invested and done all this work, but you go building by building, the energy cost is, of course, energy prices go up and down, but I mean, the overall energy usage, and that's why Kathy uses her magic jargon about the energy usage, I don't know. Yep. Is there a way to trace and show how the energy usage has gone down after these retrofits and weatherization and all that?
Yes.
Okay.
We can get that information.
Okay,
Yep.
okay, that's good. Tracking is great.
The price of a utility is what it is, but the usage is also what it is. So that's the real measure.
Right, exactly, to track the usage, to show that it's going down, and quite frankly, show that it's really money well spent, as far as the town costs and stuff like that.
Molly, I found the energy reduction plan.
Okay, if you want to forward that to Paul.
Yeah, so I can forward it. I'm just going to read that there were narrative summary. This is from 2015. I had the year wrong.
Okay.
And there were goals from years 1 to 3, goals for years 4 to 5, and I'd just like to be able to update. And it was all for a 20% energy use reduction by the end of fiscal year 2020. Obviously, with COVID, things have changed, but I'd really love to know what has been done, what of what is recommended is still good to do, and which because technology has surpassed in the last 8 years, what we shouldn't be thinking of doing anymore. So I can forward that to the CAP committee right now, and Molly, can you forward it to Paul?
I will, and thank you for doing that. And that's been on my list of something to sit down with somebody and do. And I know you're very busy,
Yeah.
but to the extent you can get around to that, and quite frankly, that's kind of like a microcosm of what a town climate action plan would be. Obviously, it would go over some of the same issues with some of the same goals and targets, but it would also be broader because it would go beyond those issues. But that's a great starting point. Thank you for
Yeah, so
bringing
it's
that
just,
up.
I don't want to be spending our time repeating suggestions we've already made and possibly have already implemented.
Right,
So.
right. Or things that don't work. We're also happy to hear
Or things
about.
that don't work.
Exactly.
Which
Like
is
this is
also
not,
very
we want
important.
to concentrate our energies, we want the town to concentrate on its energies on something where there's payback, right?
So right, and I would just caution that plans are great. Obviously, it's a blueprint and
Right.
to go a great
Yeah.
starting point. Plans and priorities and objectives change. So
Absolutely.
just
I'm not
keep
going
that
to
in mind.
be, I would like to know what has already been done. I assume there are good reasons for something not having been done, whether it's financial or impractical or whatever.
Right.
I just want to know what we are already going to update for the action plan.
Right, and that would be extremely helpful, and that's a very good concrete suggestion. So if we're done with buildings, I have a couple of other areas. I have some little tiny questions to ask at the end, but I think another big issue to talk about is solid waste. And I know there was a change that was under discussion which didn't go forward, and then now there's been a different change. And it's interesting, the impression of some major town official said like, oh, well, now recycling is mandatory, and I was like, no, but apparently it's gone up. Apparently it's dramatically increased because of doing single stream, or I guess maybe you should update us on what the current recycling situation is.
The recycling of cardboard is mandatory.
Ah,
That is not trash.
And is that local or is that state or both?
State.
Ah, okay,
I don't know if that's I would just say state, yeah.
okay. And that should be segregated, right?
No,
No, you don't want to
It's not-
segregate it. You want to
nothing-
throw it in with the rest of the
it
recycling.
all goes to the
Okay.
same place.
Okay, all right,
Recycling is up about 15%.
okay,
Recycling costs have gone down.
okay,
Some of it is the market, and some of it is that we bring our recyclables to a different location that's much closer.
okay,
The operation is more efficient. We don't have the truck with the dual containers that now that we single stream, we certainly have more capacity in our trucks. It makes the operation much quicker.
So for DPW to do recycling, it's more efficient with this new system, it sounds like?
Absolutely,
Okay,
yes.
okay. I guess some people's thought was, and I'm not an expert on recycling, was, the whole point of it is actually to have somebody use those materials again, not just to, get them out of town, but to have them actually be used. And there's been discussion, not necessarily on this committee, we haven't focused on it a whole lot about, is it really getting to the manufacturers who are gonna use it again, and just the cost of, so instead of people just maybe giving it for your pickup in 3 or 4 different categories, now it's like all lumped together, now somebody has to sort it. And, but you think at the end of the day, it's still like a cost savings for the town, actually, that we've switched to single stream recycling as far as, and maybe you haven't analyzed it, because it should reduce going to a landfill, right? If the recycling's going up, it should
Exactly.
reduce and do you feel like, so it has reduced the landfill cost, because you said you think it's been up by 15%.
Yeah, and what I can tell you is we make 10.48 less trips to the solid waste facility incinerator, CMAS, than we were before we single streamed and stopped taking the bulky waste in the rubbish trucks. So,
Yeah.
which is a savings of $10,286 a month.
All right, and that's because one of the things, like the incinerator's really far, it's like way out of town, like it's,
32 miles one way,
okay. And then your recycling facility is pretty close by, it sounds like.
less than 4.
Okay, all right, so that's huge, so kudos to whoever brilliant idea that was. And then, so now if recycling's up 15%, do you have a sense, whether it's just off the top of your head, I mean, how many households just do and don't recycle? And then obviously maybe some people imperfectly do it and they don't always get it out there, or they do, are there, when do you just go by and no recycling, no recycling, no recycling? Is it half the town, is it?
No.
Okay,
So we have 7,200 trash customers,
okay,
give or take. Call it 20, give or take, right? One way or the other at any given time. Most people do recycle.
okay,
Most people do recycle well. They know what to recycle and what not to recycle, and what's trash and what's not trash. As you know, we do recycling. I don't want to say every other week, because it's not. It's the first and third, and the second and fourth. So sometimes that fifth week,
yeah,
those few days at the fifth week always gets people. That's when we get our most phone calls. But it's basically every other week if you're a resident.
okay,
And it works, and most people do a good job at it.
okay.
It's not 100%, but I would say it's probably 80% of the people.
That's pretty good.
Mhm.
And so we don't use the Page Street facility anymore? Didn't that used to be where all the recycling was taken?
So that's Stoughton Recycling, but it's not owned by the town, and it's not, no, we did not bring our recycling there.
Okay, because again, I've had discussions in other meetings about,
Residents are allowed to bring bulky items there if they
Okay,
want.
okay.
white goods, which are large metal items, they are Saturdays,
Okay,
and or grass clipping Saturdays, but they're not affiliated with the town.
okay. Learning so much that,
Mm-hmm.
contrary to what I was told. That's good to know. All right, so sounds like there's like a step in the right direction with the recycling and also saving a lot of money for the town, because that's pretty significant. Any other questions about, Rachel's got questions?
This is a slightly unrelated, but I saw that there is a new app
Oh, yes.
by Department of Public Works about recycling, and I just want to know, do you have numbers on that? Do you feel like it's getting engagement, if it's working, I guess, or if it's being used? I know I downloaded it, but I don't know how many people have.
We have a few subscribers. We don't, we're not a mass media corporation, so
Right.
we do our best with advertising and things like that. But yes, we have a new app that you can schedule and pay for a bulky item pickup. And the schedule will also give you your trash and recycling days if you have any questions, or if there's a holiday, what happens, and things like that.
All right, so it sounds like it's a good idea, very convenient to have that, so people have their questions answered. So that's great. So, the other piece, and there's really nothing to answer at this point, the other piece, which some towns do, is the composting and the picking up the compost, which we're not there yet, and, part of the solution is people who do have yards can do the backyard composting, and that's an item we would certainly address in our climate action plan. But I don't know if you're aware of any other, and I know there's private vendors like Black Earth Compost, which will pick up both from commercial, residential, and schools. I don't know if you're aware of any municipalities who actually separately have their town pick up composting and do something with it, or?
Not that I'm aware of, but I am aware of the Black Earths of the world.
Okay.
And so as you said, we just haven't done that yet. We know about it, we're learning about it, and
Okay.
at some point, we're hoping to roll that out.
Okay. All right. And I wanted to comment on something I saw in the mail recently. I don't know if the water department is under your department or a separate department, but I just happened to notice, and it actually is, people should read these when they come, or because they, or the ones from DPW about, what you do with various things. This is very instructive about don't put your oil down the drain, but it also says, and this is something we can talk with, looks like Phil McNulty, who's the waterworks, says place food scraps in waste containers or garbage bags for disposal of solid waste. It seems like that's an opportunity you could have instead say, or compost. Composting is good, so it's just something that could be added to the town communications to encourage that option for people.
I won't speak for Mr. McNulty, but what I think he means is don't put your grease or your food scraps down the drain, because that's gonna clog the sewer.
Right. No, that's clearly the message. That's clearly the message there, and I'm not so sure people really know that. Like how, maybe you only know it when the plumber comes to your house and they tell you, really, you've already got a problem or something like that. But again, these things are actually very, very helpful and very informative. Anything else sort of like on the big picture issue as far as, things that fall within DPW? I had a couple of questions. Actually, I had another area to go into. Any other questions before I raise another area to talk about with Mr. Jaffoon? So the other area I just wanted to talk about is the issue, obviously, well, I presume you have something to do with maintenance of grounds, meaning, the landscaping and people out there mowing and things of that nature that falls within DPW? Mm-hmm. Okay. Just because, and you may or may not be aware from whatever information you get from the state. So if you look up sustainable landscaping for the state, so on mass.gov, it comes up with a whole, statement of objectives and principles, which is using battery-operated lawn equipment instead of gas-powered lawn equipment, and leaf blowers and things of that nature. And also, pollinator gardens or leaving things wild and things of that nature. I think that might be something that would be worth, maybe at some other point in time, some ideas and some discussion points. I think a lot of times everybody in the world like over mows and over cares for things, and it's just kind of an easy source of greenhouse gas emissions to reduce or eliminate. For example, the idea of no mow May, which is if everybody just gives like an extra month, just let the grass or whatever grow, that it's actually good for pollinators, it's good for biodiversity, which is in crisis too. It seems like that's something easy to do. Sometimes I see, whether it's in town or someplace else, people with their leaf blowers just blowing. There's a few crumbs of dirt over there. I've got this gas-powered leaf blower. I mean, it seems like that's something that's perhaps overused, and or, is this something that you could have on your long-range plan, that when equipment needs to get replaced, you could explore battery-operated equipment, which of course is a lot less polluting too. I mean, even in the short term, as far as air quality, which feeds into greenhouse gas emissions. It's short-term air quality. It's long-term climate change problem. So is that something that you're hearing about or thinking about? Looking at landscaping practices and looking at electric or battery operated versus gas powered.
Yeah, we'll look at anything, any equipment that that will help with that stuff, but we'll also be able to do the job equally or better than it's being done right now. So the idea of cutting the grass at Halloran Park with a battery powered lawnmower or something like that is we'd have to really think about that before we thought that was the best way to get that job done.
Mm-hmm. Right. I mean,
quickly and efficiently.
Right. Right. So again, I'm curious and continue to read what the state has on its web, because basically they're talking about their management of public lands, which I think is both little grassy areas in front of a state building, and of course something much larger and more complex. And I'm really curious how they're working through those issues and how they're getting the equipment changed, or what the trajectory is for that. But I think I think sometimes it's okay to be less meticulous about a leaf here and there or whatever it may be, as far as where people spend their greenhouse gas emissions and where they spend their energies. Questions about landscaping or anything of that nature? All right. I just had, I think, if I haven't skipped over something on my list, another question for you. So I think I saw a flyer, maybe I saw it at the library, about like April 27th cleanup day.
Yes.
Yeah.
Which is great, because there's litter all over this town. I'm sure
Yeah.
you've noticed.
We're trying.
Yeah, no, I'm not blaming you. I'm blaming the people who are dropping it all the time, left, right, and center. So you're having, it's like a volunteer cleanup day. So when you're having that, are you having people, or somehow at some point trying to segregate it into recycling? Because there is a ton of plastic lying around, as you know.
Yeah. Well, we're gonna choose areas that well-known hotspots that we know of. That I can name 10 of them right off the top of my head, of where the roadside trash and
Okay.
some dumping happens.
Okay.
We're gonna have volunteers. You're gonna be able to sign up for an area if you'd like. Say it's your neighborhood or something.
Mm-hmm.
We're gonna give all the volunteers a T-shirt, and we're gonna have a cookout afterward. But yeah, we'll be able to segregate trash versus recycling on that day. That's April 27th,
Right.
8 to noon.
Okay. Hoping to get some school kids, I assume?
Yeah, we've gotten some volunteers already. We've gotten some donations.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. And we haven't done it to this extent.
Mm-hmm.
So we're going to try it and see what happens, and hopefully it can grow from here.
Okay, that's a great idea. Yeah, you don't have to go for walks too much to find that, and sometimes I'm sure it's accidental, something gets spilled, or people's trash gets turned over, but nobody bothers to pick it up afterwards or whatever. Don't ever put your trash out on a really windy day. I mean, just.
That's why we don't want to lose.
I know. Exactly. All right, so, I guess that, what our hopes are, because obviously there's a lot of complex things to work out and, to have like a long-term plan. Our hope is to have some engineering consultant assistant who is, familiar with how to do these things and our grant assistance. We've got a grant we've already applied for, waiting to hear back from, and we'll apply for another grant. But they will probably be talking to you if and when we get a consultant or some grant assistance. They'll be talking to you and trying to, it sounds like the short term is really, you still a lot of energy efficiencies to build into the buildings and to retrofits and weatherization. That you've already made a lot of progress, obviously, over the last 8 years, but that, I sort of think, and somebody else getting a sense of a plan going forward, maybe the next 5 to 10 years or whatever would be helpful. And the whole point is to make it a workable plan and a specific plan and something people can work with in the future. So that's what we're looking for, and that's what we're hoping for. So if you ever have any issues you want us to talk about or think about, or you think of relevance, just shoot us an email and we can put it on our agenda and we can talk about it or be aware of it. So it'd be great. It's great for us to be aware of this cleanup day. I'm sure a lot of us will want to participate and make sure that that's a success. Aisha, Janet, Rachel, any other questions for Mr. Jaffoon?
No, I'm good, but thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us.
Absolutely, and thank you for coming in person. That's really great, actually.
Oh,
it's very
yeah, sure.
helpful.
I don't like this.
I know.
It's
It's
online.
it's
Sorry.
challenging. It's challenging.
Yeah.
But
Thank you.
we'll certainly be in touch. Were we all set, Michael?
All good, yep.
Yeah.
Thanks,
Thank you very much.
Yeah, and thanks for having me, and feel free to reach out
Okay.
with anything.
All right.
All right, thank you.
We will.
Yeah,
Have a
good
good
night.
evening. Thank
Yeah.
you. Alrighty. Okay, so that was informative, actually, which is terrific. Just briefly to touch base on the Community Engagement Forum, I think everybody here was able to be there except Janet, and Janet just wanted to report that went very well. Kathy Stanley, I think, was a huge hit, and everything she says is so very, very important and very, very meaningful. So that was terrific.
I hope a lot of people showed up. I tried to share it with some Stoughton things that I had at some Stoughton sites, so.
Oh, good. Yes,
More people
absolutely.
were.
I thought your presentation was really good, Molly.
Thank you, thank you. Well, it was good to have the community there and to see that we can include as many people as we can in the discussion. So I was very happy with it, and our committee had great attendance too. So that was great. Thank you for everybody who came. And when we do our grant applications, we can certainly say, we have done a community engagement forum, and obviously there will be future ones as things begin to get more and more developed, and ideas become a little bit more concrete. So I wanted to talk about a SMAC appearance, and again, not everybody is here tonight. I know Laura would be interested in appearing, so we definitely have an offer to appear on SMAC with Joe Feaster, who would be an interviewer. It would be good to have at least 2 or 3 people from the committee. So maybe just email me if you're interested, and email me with times that might work for you. I have not been told whether it could be in the evening, whether it has to be on a Saturday morning. I have no idea, and obviously it depends on Mr. Feaster's schedule. So I think if we just try to make that something we can plan no later than April, sort of strike while the iron is hot, and while Anya at SMAC is interested in having us appear, and Mr. Feaster has agreed that he will interview the committee. So I think that would be terrific, and another way to do community outreach and let people know what we're looking at, why we're looking at it, what the whole point is, et cetera, et cetera. So we will hopefully make some real traction on that. So anything about the SMAC appearance before I move on? Thoughts?
Is this an interview at the studio there?
Yes, it would be at the studio, right. It would be an interview, but Anya made it sound like she could also have like a live audience there that could ask questions, which I think would be nice.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Wonderful.
Yeah, and since they're SMAC, they have ways of publicizing things and hopefully reaching people who didn't come to our other event but might be interested in coming to this event. So I think that would be very helpful. And the SMAC studios are very nice. If you've ever been there, I don't know if you've been before, Janet, but it's really nice to see.
Long time ago.
Okay. All right,
Yeah.
so my other question was about scheduling, because turns out March 11th I'm not available. So we have two options. Either somebody's going to run the meeting on March 11th, or we can move to, wow, my calendar is way off from this calendar here. Move to, the next one would be March 25th, which really does seem like a long time away. What is the feelings of the committee?
I won't be able to make March 11th. We got municipal operations. that
Okay,
night.
so I think that answers our question. If our secretary can't be here, we can't be here. So I will make sure, we will free up the room for March 11th. Our next meeting will be March 25th. And we will make sure we have a full agenda at that meeting and move forward. And that looks like that's going to be at the Yatanis room. So next time, just make sure you check the invitation, and because the room is going to change occasionally back and forth. So we need to make sure we've got the right room posted, or the right room when we show up at the right room. On grants update, and I believe I'm repeating what I said a couple of weeks ago, that Pam McCarthy had a conversation or reached out to somebody at EEA, which is the other entity which we should be trying to get a grant from, but we're not even, as of a couple of weeks ago, they hadn't even, released their grant application information yet. But the conversation went like, well, what is it that you want, and what is it that you need? So she was going to try to arrange a meeting with CAP, with the individual whose name I forget from EEA. I need to follow up with Pam on that, and if she, because she was invited to tonight's meeting but couldn't come. I need to follow up with Pam, and if this person can't come even virtually to an evening meeting, then I'll try to get in meetings during the day, and if anybody can join me. But I think we just want to move that forward and have that conversation, because they're an important grant source, we sort of need to let them know what we're looking for and what we've been doing. I think part of the response to that is, I know that some work has been done, and James would be much more familiar than me, on vulnerability to climate change. I think mostly focusing on flooding. I don't know how much it goes beyond flooding, but there's a very thick municipal vulnerability preparedness report. At least I saw the draft report from last fall, and it goes into, it covers multiple towns, but it's got really helpful tables about what Stoughton has done and what Stoughton still needs to work on. So at least as far as that part of emergency response or being prepared, a lot of that work may be done, and that's great, because we don't need to redo it, or we may know what work still is outstanding. It doesn't necessarily address every other potential disaster, including heat waves or powerful storms that maybe don't cause flooding, but they knock out utilities, they knock out heat and things of that nature. And I know that actually, I know it's an issue that you've been very interested in, is emergency preparedness. And we would want to make sure that we have that as a robust portion of our climate action plan, right? All right. And then I think next I had on my agenda the interim recommendations. I think we're hitting where it's game time to really work on these. And I think, Rachel, you said you were going to take some of the interim recommendations and put them in the categories. Is that something?
It didn't really work when I did that.
Okay.
It didn't work well, because we didn't have one for each category, and it ended up just looking messy.
Okay. All right. So I think then the challenge with the interim recommendations, and again, it's helpful just to have talked to Mr. Jaffoon and gained more information from him, is to see to what extent we can make them more specific, because the takeaway pointer from talking to town manager Tom Coulter was, your plan to be actionable needs to be specific. Part of which is why we need a consultant who can point us in a more specific direction. So instead of saying, put up some solar panels, they can say, well, the most obvious places to start would be, this place and this place, or the place that should be, explored first, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So I think we want to go back and look at our list, which I can resend. the latest list. I'm make myself a note and see if we can make it more specific. Also, bearing in mind what Kathy Stanley said at her presentation at our community forum, she did touch upon like EV charging stations and things of that nature. I got a sense that she thinks prices are high, but then prices might change on some of these things. So I think when we meet on March 25th, we're going to want to be seriously looking at a list of interim recommendations that can be maybe more fleshed out and maybe voted upon, so that we end up drafting something to present to town officials. In light of the fact that it is a climate emergency, we want to pinpoint things we can do as soon as possible and see if we can get moving on those as soon as possible. I think that's our big task really for the next month, is to work on the interim recommendations. And again, it's helpful to see what other towns have done, although there's a very, very long list, and they're just trying to prioritize maybe what should be at the front of the list. Anything else on the interim recommendations? Again, people, I know we've talked about them. I know we've, sort of floated a list. I think obviously we can add to the list, but we could also refine the list if we can. And then I think before we actually present it to town officials, we would want to touch base with Kathy Stanley. Yeah, maybe have her meet with us virtually, whether it's on the 25th or the very next meeting at the latest, and have her weigh in, because I think her opinion is going to have a lot of weight, actually, and it's could be very determinative. And maybe we're going to end up, narrowing it down. But whatever we do, we want to do something that perhaps can be effective in getting things going in the next year before you wait for a final report, because we really can't afford to wait, from my perspective. So we're ready to move on to number 9, other business that cannot be anticipated. So this one relates to one of your causes. Rachel, did you see the article in the Globe magazine?
No, I did not.
About-
Which cause was this?
The title of the article is "The Massachusetts Car Idling Law No One Seems to Care About." So I'm going to send you.
Like that cause. Please send me the link.
I will. Well, I don't know if I can link it. I'll try to link it.
Oh.
I should be able to, but if not, I'll send you an actual hard copy. But this individual goes.
I'll find it.
Yeah, he really goes into the problem and the fact that it's not being enforced. He sees it violated all over the place, and concerns with that. So that is, and I think that was on our short list of recommendations. Is that should be enforced? People should be notified of it. People should be aware of it, and people should pay attention. In fact, it actually talks about the very issues you've raised, that it's not bad for your car to turn it on and off. It's okay. Your car will be okay.
Oh, I'll contact him. Maybe he'll do a follow-up about what we're doing here. So, but yeah, I did see in good climate news, I did see something about how there's making a breakthrough with batteries, with the energy batteries, so that it's easier to store things, which I know Kathy Stanley has talked about how right now we don't have the storage capacity with solar panels. So there is good news in the world.
That's good. That's good to hear. We see that every once in a while. So anything else before we go to our last item on the agenda? We have some people here, so maybe they want to make some public comment. Janet, Aisha, Rachel, anything else? Michael, anything else?
Can I just say one thing? I
Yes,
don't know
please,
where
Janet.
this fits in. I wasn't sure whether to mention it when the Department of Public Works, Paul was talking, or not, but last year someone mentioned something about rainwater harvesting. And I don't know if there's going to be a water shortage, but and I've never done it, but I don't think a lot of people do it.
So I know my sister-in-law Needham has rain barrels, and we do have a rain barrel program along with the composting program in DPW. I personally haven't looked into it, but it is something that maybe we don't need to start it, but we can definitely publicize it.
That's what I'm thinking, because I see, my lawn doesn't get very green because, whatever reason, but I know that it'd be nice to be able to water some things, whether it's the plants or, the vegetables or whatever you're doing, so. But I know some people were doing it very successfully, and just thought it would be another nice thing to mention.
Yeah, no, that's a great point, and again, it's some of the unknown things that the town is doing that people, you know, which is why we like to have community engagement events, but, and I do think it's
Yeah.
on our website, there's a reference, James asked for that, there's a reference to the rain barrel program and the composting program as well.
Right, right.
And we can obviously beef that up, and make that more robust. And every time we have some kind of public event, we should try to make sure that gets mentioned.
Right. Anything pop?
Oh, just one more thing, which goes back to this is an update too, it goes back to the article. I've been told that our article for a consultant to be
Oh, right.
retained is in the warrant. I don't know the number now. I just got an email about appearing before FinCom. It's this week, so thanks for plenty of notice. And I'm not even sure which of the two dates it is. So I asked a clarifying question. So once I get that completely figured out, I can share that with people if anybody else wants to come to the meeting. But at this point, I don't know which of the two dates this week it is. Here we go. Nope, that's just the general email. One of them is being, cancel. One of them is being rescheduled. That's the Cedar Hill budget. All right, if I get any clarification on those FinCom meetings, public hearings, I will let you know in case you have a moment you want to stop by, so we can talk about these things. All right, so I think before we conclude the meeting, we do have public comment on the agenda. Does anybody want to make a public comment? And feel free to come forward, and you can be seen and heard by everybody here.
Do you need like in school board for them to write their names and addresses down?
I haven't done that today because there's usually just been one individual who I know very well. So we could do that in future. You could just tell us who you are. You don't have to give us your address. You can just tell us who you are. You're a Stoughton resident. If you want to come forward and make a comment, SMAC will record it, and our virtual members will hear you as well.
Yeah, I wanted to ask a question. I want to know, word on the street is that you guys are interested in giving us SEG scores. So is that something that you want to pursue, or is that something you're ignoring?
What can I ask you to define SEG scores?
The what does it stand for? Social environmental governance credits. Well, the word on the street is that you want to implement those, and the rumor has it that you want us to be penalized if we have a low score and have to pay more in property tax. And if you get a better score, then you get a reduction. That's the word on the street about your meetings.
What street are you on?
Yeah, can I just, we generally don't entertain questions, but to be honest, I'm really curious because I've never even remotely heard of such a thing. Can I ask what your source is?
I think you're barking up the really wrong street here.
Wait a minute.
You might be streets ahead, but who knows?
You are not. You even mentioned it at the meeting, and I'm the source. You mentioned
What?
that you want to get into SEG scores. You mentioned
No,
it at the meeting.
No,
We
that's
did
never
not.
been.
Yeah, you have.
Okay,
you have-
so-
I'm sorry, which meeting?
Is that your question?
That's one of the
Okay,
questions.
all right, so we're done with that question. Next I'll respond to it. I'm not gonna have a back and
No.
forth, Jonna. I wrote down the question. We'll respond to it next time.
Well,
Next
what about
question?
the other question I asked
I'm sorry.
about the thermal runaway. You said you'd address that too. That's an important
Thermal
issue.
runaway?
Yeah, because it's causing potential dangers with fires that could happen. So why aren't you? I mean, wouldn't you want to address that, or you don't care about the dangers?
Okay.
You only have a trajectory to
I
go
don't-
right towards what you.
Could you clarify thermal runaway? Could you give me like a whole sentence what that relates to?
Thermal runaway is a factor in that these batteries from the electric cars heat up if they get if they have any, like if you go over a pothole, and it can affect the thermal runaway, and then it can affect the batteries, so they burn. And when they burn, you can't put these fires out. It's like a hoverboard. You can't put the fire out. It burns it burns so hot, and there's explosions even after they get the battery fire out. You have to keep an eye on it for like 3 days afterwards, because they can explode. So why wouldn't you want to address those things before before you
I mean,
talk about. the-
Rachel, we're not doing back and forth. I'm taking down her
Yeah.
questions, and then we could determine whether to address them in the report, address them with the consultant, or if appropriate, address it at the next meeting, but it's not, I don't wanna go do it back and forth. So I'm writing down what you said about your first comment, and I've got, definitely now I understand your second comment. It relates to that. Okay, and was there anything, the other comments?
Yeah, I have one more.
Jonna.
Were you saying that at the next meeting, you're gonna address those questions? Is that what you're telling us?
Not necessarily.
Oh, yeah, okay. All right, that's what I thought.
What I said was that they may be addressed in a report.
No, you said at the next meeting. I did, you did say that.
I said, or in a report. I'm not an engineer. I can't address thermal runaway myself, but any safety issues that relate to anything, I think are fair game for us to talk about in the report. So that's why I've written them down.
Okay, and then the
And,
other.
well, you had a third
I just-
question?
The third question I had was, a lot of people are up in arms about the fact that you wanna get rid of single-use, water bottles. What would be the reasoning behind that? We already recycle, and you're still leaving bottles with tea or with, soda, whatever, unaddressed. So how would that make things better? Is this gonna be another one of those issues where somebody requests that plastic bags be taken off of the, town market, and then all of a sudden we have to put them back in again to put them in our trash? I mean, cause if the trajectory isn't followed, I mean, where are you getting this from? Why would that make any sense? If we're already, recycling them, and you're only taking a small proportion, what's the point?
Okay, so I have your three points. And anyone else have public comment?
Can I just ask, Aisha a quick question?
No, you can't. You can make a comment. This is public comment, it's not
That's
questions.
what I thought, yeah, I had a feeling that was gonna be a no.
All right. So, any other public comment? We're ready to, can I have a motion to, close the meeting?
Motion to adjourn?
Any seconds?
A second.
All in favor of adjourning the meeting? Aye?
Fine.
All right, any opposed? Okay, meeting is adjourned. Thank you, everybody.